Hello and welcome along to the Matchbook World Cup podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined, as always, for one last time, Adrian, Clarke, Mark O'Hare and Miguel Delaney. And we've got a cracking final in store with Argentina versus France. And we will also cover the third place playoff. If you want timestamps in the description to head straight to those games for previews, check it out in the description. That should be there now. But Adrian, firstly, it's been some World Cup, hasn't it?
I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's been pretty intense. I'm a little bit worn out by it, watching a lot of football. But no, it has been enjoyable. I think it's been quite a clean World Cup. Not too many red cards, not too many outrageous challenges. But yeah, I think that no matter what happens, and obviously the two players at opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of Messi and Mbappe have got themselves to the final in a bit of a shootout. I think that's a great narrative. And I kind of think that no matter what happens, it'll be remembered as Messi's World Cup. Really, I'd certainly like to think so. I think he's been phenomenal considering his age and considering where he was a couple of years ago in terms of his form, or even last year. I think what we've witnessed from him and that sort of Argentine arm, that wave of support behind him and the team has been just amazing. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping still it ends up as Messi's tournament.
Yeah, and we'll preview that game very shortly. Miguel, we were just chatting off air before we went live in terms of best World Cup, and there's a lot of different ways you can look at it, and it is tough during a World Cup to decide how good this one actually is. But on the pitch, it has been brilliant overall in terms of drama.
Yeah. I mean, again, we shouldn't get away from the bigger questions about Qatar and all that. But one of the calculations is the power of sport, the kind of the entertainment factor of it, the symbolism of it. I would say this World Cup has been, in terms of pure football, has been very good in terms of constant drama in action. I think it's different as to whether the quality has been good. I mean, sometimes it doesn't really matter in that regard. I mean, 98 was probably a higher quality. It was actually far higher quality, to be honest. But it's difficult to think of too many World Cups that have had this amount of constant drama. I mean, I must say, actually, I was at the French game last night and actually enjoyed that more than almost any other game in the tournament because the way Morocco put it up to them. And there's been a lot of that sort of thing. Netherlands, Argentina obviously go down as one of the classics. But of course, it could all be infused by this great storyline. And I think that's what really makes World Cups in that sense. Like Italia 90 wasn't a good World Cup, but people remember it because of certain moments and storylines. And this could be similar, especially if it ends up with Messi winning it. But then I think Adrian's right. I think no matter what happens, it will be known for Messi in the same way. I mean, look what happened to Roberto Baggio in 94. I mean, it's actually, there's an argument that Baggio dominated a World Cup more than Maradona until it got to the final, given the amount of key goals he scored. But then, of course, what happened. And I suppose there's probably a global will for similar not to happen to Messi.
Yeah, people always remember winners. And Mark, again, you find it tough during a World Cup to decide how good it is. But for pure drama, I think the quarterfinal weekend in particular, those 4 games back to back, they all had something a small bit different.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I think from a betting perspective, it's been a real roller coaster the first week or two. Was a bit here, there, and everywhere, really. But since we've reached the sort of knockout stages, things have settled down a little bit. We've got a better read on most of the teams, and there's been plenty of drama, plenty of headlines, plenty of storylines too. But yeah, there's been a few standouts. That Argentina-Netherlands match was amazing. It had everything, really, didn't it? Across the sphere, really. Plenty of argy-bargy, some comebacks, some well-worked goals, some glittering individual displays as well. A penalty shootout always helps, and then I think Serbia-Switzerland stands out to me as well as just being just chaos, just wonderful chaos, and hoping to see more in the final because we've got 2 really well-matched teams, and it's actually quite nice. I know it's great to have an underdog story and have an African team in the semi-finals in terms of Morocco and Croatia punching above their weight yet again, but it does come down to the fact we've got 2 of the top 3 in the betting pre-tournament in the final, which is always a good thing. I think you've got 2 of the best units in the whole competition fighting out in the final. So in that sense, we should be in for a really well contested final.
Yeah, they're never be able to take away those 3 minutes where Germany and Spain were going out at the expense of Costa Rica and Japan. That for me was one of the highlights. It was like, what is going on?
The best thing at the I was in a pub watching that, and at the time I screenshotted the table in the 2 minutes, going, "This is amazing." And obviously I only lasted 2 minutes, but it was almost like showing people the screenshot the next day, going, "Look what I got! Look what I got!" It was mad that those two teams are going out, and that would have just blown up all the outright previews. Speaking of the outright previews, quick little shout out to Miguel and Adrian, not only tipping Argentina 6.8, who are almost there for the outright market, but also Messi Golden Boot at 14.0. So I don't know if people double that up, they'll be in around 80 or 90 to 1. It's nervous times, Miguel. It's Messi and Argentina are so close, yet they might not win either of those markets. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those finals.
Yeah, completely. I mean, this probably is. There's been a few games like this to tournament that we've described as 50-50. England were talking about France in those regards. France got the job done, but this is probably similar. I know we'll get into it later on, but there's still something so unconvincing about France. I mean, the thing about Argentina, even though there's an argument over whether they're a very good team at all, certainly in contrast to the way they were talked up in that run and the build-up, but what they do have is this dogged momentum that we've talked about. It's something that takes over, I think, when a tournament happens. And it can be key tournaments and often overlooked. It's how some teams go and win it. You can even point to Italy in Euro 2020, where when a team gets into a campaign like that, and where actually the opening defeat arguably helped them. And I mean, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily confident of them finishing the job now, but I'm intrigued by it. I do think this could go either way.
Yeah, we're looking forward to previewing in just a second. And before we get into the sign-up offer, Adrian, shout out to you on another correct score landed. France 2, Morocco 0. It was never in doubt when Morocco were dominating the game in that early second half.
There's some hairy moments towards the end, wasn't there? Yeah, that could easily have gone awry, that particular bet. But yeah, no, we'll take it. We'll take those wins.
Yeah, been pretty good form. The long shots over the last couple of weeks, it's picked up in the knockout stages. And for those that like following the guys' podcast Best Bets, as a lot of listeners do, we do have a brilliant sign-up offer that has proved quite popular with a lot of you guys. And it's basically double the odds on podcast Best Bets for new customers. So that's double the odds on all our podcast Best Bets put up here. So there'll be 3 in total. All you have to do is enter the bonus code podcast. Enter the bonus code podcast when signing up. It's very simple. It'll be in that form when you sign up. And that's up to £50 in cash into your account to top up your winnings. So well worth taking advantage of that. We'll get straight into it and take a look at the betting for the World Cup final. It's Argentina versus France. And this was a market that, as Miguel touched on, is very close to 50-50. Argentina 3.0 in the 90-minute market. France 2.88. The draw is available at 3.1. Both teams to score no is favoured at 1.88. Yes, it's 2.1. The Asian handicap line is effectively a draw no bet market, with France the slight favourites at 1.96. And the goal line is 2. Adrian, you followed and stayed loyal to Argentina all the way along. Is it right that Argentina are ever so slight underdogs, or would you have them a little bit closer, if not slight favourites?
No, I think it's right, actually. No, I think on the balance of things, France do have a better team. They're slightly... Yeah, just slightly more sophisticated, rounded, whatever you want to call it. I think they've got a little bit more about them, but doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win, because what they don't have is that wave of support from the stands, which is like a home game. It's like playing in Buenos Aires. I think that is a factor to consider. I do wonder if the odds might be a little bit wider if that wasn't the case. If there were hardly any Argentina fans there, whether these teams would be matched up slightly further apart, I don't know. But no, it's an even game. But I would say that France are just about worthy favourites. But I'm with Miguel. A little bit like Brazil. I was never that hot on Brazil. I didn't see anything that special about them. And it's a little bit like that with France. Obviously, you've got Griezmann, who's been in great form, and Mbappe, who's was on fire and now is sort of is still good, but it's not been as good the last couple of games. But I look at them at the back, and they're not that strong at the back. I thought that was a good change, bringing in Canate for Upamecano, but yeah, they're not a perfect team. No, it's a really, really close match, this. So yeah, for in terms of my tip for the final, I'm actually going with a goals angle. We'll get to Argentina a bit later, but yeah, I'm going with both teams to score, because Argentina have scored in every game. They've actually scored at least 2 goals in 5 of their 6 games. So even though people have been saying throughout they're not that good, they're not that, nothing special at all. Team of workers. Well, they've scored at least 2 in 5 of 6 games, which is not bad, I don't think, at World Cup finals. And France have obviously only kept 1 clean sheet. And then you flip it around and you say, okay, Argentina have got good game management. They can see out matches, but they've also wobbled at times, haven't they? They wobbled badly against the Dutch. They wobbled against, Saudi Arabia. They didn't look that convincing at times against Croatia in that first half. So and Australia came at them as well. So I can see cracks in both defences. Both attacks are phenomenal. Just got players that are absolutely banging form. So for me, I can see both teams scoring, and to get it at 2.1 is attractive. I was looking at the World Cup finals record. The first 13 World Cup finals all had both teams to score, but in the last 7, just 2 have landed. So
two from 7, 2 from the last 7.
2 from the last 7, but the first 13, both BTTS landed in all of them. So maybe we're due a little bit of a correction. Maybe we'll have to wait and see. So I'm going to go with both teams to score 2.1.
Okay, yeah, and throughout the tournament, both teams to score, yes, has predominantly been the underdog in that market, which is obviously not a trend associated generally with Premier League games in particular. Miguel, you're in agreement with Adrian. You do expect goals here.
Yeah. Again, I think it's just the nature of the 2 teams. Argentina look like they've got, after so much tension throughout this campaign, it does look like a certain kind of confidence or assertiveness is overtaking them. They're willing to take chances. France obviously have such a goal threat. And the one thing about this French team, I just don't see them as anywhere near as sturdy as 2018. They give up so much. Morocco should have scored once or twice on Thursday night, or on Wednesday night, sorry. And ultimately is why I think this game will be defined by the forwards. I mean, obviously they frame everything, Messi and Mbappe, but that both teams are actually a little bit front loaded in that way.
Yeah, so both teams have scored 2.1 currently. Mark,
just very quickly on it. I mean, Lloris, how busy has Lloris been? I mean, he's had to make a lot of saves. He's been one of the stars of the tournament in some respect. I think a lot of goalkeepers have stood out actually, particularly in the knockout stages. But yeah, he's been busy, and I just know. But there's always a mistake in him, I feel. And you could look across that French back line and say something similar. And you could do the same with Argentina. I'm with Mig. I think it's a front-loaded final. So even though these can be a bit of a stalemate when teams are scared of losing, I think in both their cases, attack will be the best form of defence.
Yeah, I saw a great tweet from a Tottenham fan saying Lloris is pinging passes out to the right mid of France there. And, when he's looking for doing that back in Spurs, it's going to be in the roads out of the city ground. So it sounds about right on Lloris, but he has, in fairness, been brilliant at this tournament, especially because a lot of people, particularly English journalists, haven't been a huge fan of him over the years. Mark, this has been set up beautifully by not just Adrian and Miguel, but myself, letting the 2 lads go first. They're expecting goals. Given France's leaky defence, Argentina have looked dodgy at the back at times, but you're going complete opposite here.
Kind of. I mean, their bets can land, and so can mine. And I'm taking under 2.25 goals in this match, just shy of 1.8. In terms of their match prices, I think France deserve to be slightly shorter in the prices. I think you can get France +0 on the Asian handicap at close to evens. That would be of interest. I just think, collectively, side by side, France have the more rounded squad, have obviously a more experienced head coach in charge there as well. They've got more threats. A lot of what Argentina does goes through Messi, understandably so. He is a bit of a cheat code, and he's been playing above and beyond even the levels we have ever seen from him really during this competition. Clearly, that's something to be respected. But ultimately, France, if it's not Mbappe, it could be Dembele, it could be Giroud, it could be Griezmann. Not everything goes through Mbappe. If you look at the kind of goals and assists from both teams, I think Messi's accounting for about 60% of goal contributions for Argentina. Mbappe is nowhere near that level for France. The Argentinian defence does concern me a little bit, actually, in terms of not just individual kind of ability, but pace against the likes of Mbappe and Dembele. But that's where I think, things could be interesting in terms of tactical approach, because Lionel Scaloni has shown an ability to adapt his own systems and approaches to determine who they're playing, really. And he went with a 3-man defence against the Dutch, matched them up, fielded an extra midfielder against Croatia. I was quite critical of him making so many changes after the Saudis match, but actually I think in the knockout stages he's been quite impressively adaptable and versatile. So I'm really interested to see how he will set his team up here. I suspect he'll try and drop that defence a little bit deeper to try and negate the threat of Mbappe in behind. But also you look at France tactically, they're not the most high-pressing team in this competition, and far from it. Their possession figures are pretty bang average for a team in the World Cup final. Bar Australia and Tunisia, they've been having at most 55% of the ball across the board, and that includes a game against Poland. So I just feel like whether it's fear, whether it's the fact it's a World Cup final or not, I think it has to be taken into account here. And, both teams are going to be, well, they probably will be fearful of Messi and Mbappe as well. So eager to see how it plays out. But I just think Argentina's midfield, just full of terriers and tigers and rascals, really. I think they'll be really looking forward to the challenge of trying to thwart the French attack. They do lack the same pace, the same athleticism of France, but they are kind of canny and crafty in their own little way. Eager to see if they can keep their own emotions in check as well, which we've seen be up and down throughout this competition. They do have a propensity to blow up, and ill discipline could be a factor here. But I think that's probably why I lean towards France slightly. But 4 years ago, this World Cup final ended 4-2 in France's favour. That is a massive, massive outlier compared to normal World Cup finals. Adrian sort of touched on it there, but since 1990 to 2014, 7 World Cup finals, average 1.14 goals. 4 went to extra time, 3 ended up goalless in 90 minutes, 6 of the 7 went unders. Both teams to score copped just once, and 6 of 7 were also half-time drawn or draws. So even if you include the 4-2 France-Croatia game, the average goals per game across the last 8 finals creeps up to just 1.75. So I think the sort of close to 4-5 on under 2.25 holds plenty of appeal for me. Basically 3 goals or more to see the bet bust. And the other one would be to back under 0.15, under 0.5 first half goals, which is at 2.4. The average time of the first goal across those 8 finals is the 41st minute. And 2 goals actually in that time came very early on in the France-Italy game, the Zidane match. So basically there's 2 goals-based wagers, both of which for me offer plenty of value, but they're not kind of the goals-based bets that you want to be cheering on in a World Cup final. It won't be an enjoyable watch cheering them on, but in terms of a price, I think they do offer the best value. So, kind of begrudgingly putting up 2 negative goal trends there, but it is what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, Mark, you're generally a positive bettor. So, and look, they're great to cheer on if they win, but that's under 2.25 goal, 1.79 for Mark. Split stakes with under half a goal first half, 2.4, and then both teams have scored 2.1 with Adrian and Miguel. Look, 1-1 with 2 second half goals covers everyone's bet there. So that's what we'll be cheering on the Matchbook podcast. Are we done on this game? Any final thoughts? I know there's a long shot best bets, but we'll cover a bit more. But anything else from you guys? Are you happy enough to move on? Teams like it.
Yeah, happy
Cool.
enough. I think France is maybe the sensible pick, but Argentina have a wave of momentum, and it's a very powerful one. Look, it's a difficult one. It really is difficult. And look, we're split on even the goals angle. That shows how hard this game is potentially to predict.
Yeah, absolutely.
France are kind of your default winner, aren't they? They're a bit like it. That feels like what it's become. And because this is their 3rd final in 4 tournaments, it feels like they're kind of a modern Germany, especially down to the way they don't necessarily impress you. They beat tournament darlings, and yet there they are. But Germany didn't always win competitions even through that spell, because they weren't always perfect teams. And I think this isn't a complete France team. They're not kind of an absolute certainty in that way. And I feel there's just sufficient potential chaos to this game that France mightn't necessarily handle that well.
Okay, it's set up for a fascinating game. That's Sunday 3:00, and before that, there's people Saturday 3:00. People give out about the 4th place playoff, but it will be a long run to Sunday without it. So we will take a look at the betting here. Saturday 3:00, Croatia versus Morocco. Croatia can be backed on the 90-minute match odds at 2.46. Morocco are 3.1 on Matchbook. The draw is available at 3.55. Both teams to score yes. 1.76 makes a nice change this tournament. The Asian handicap line sees Morocco get a 1/4 goal head start at 1.85, and the total is 2.5, slightly shaded towards the over. So, Mark, I'll stick with you on this one. A couple of more positive bets. Just a quick word and something we didn't cover in the first game on that extra day's rest. Do you take much of that into account when factoring and pricing a game?
Yeah, it can definitely have an edge. Really depends who it is and the journey to get this far. I don't think there's a huge amount to be gleaned from it in terms of the World Cup final, just because the games are played on Tuesday and Wednesday, and the final's not till Sunday, so it should in theory be fine. And look, these players haven't really been sort of taken to the mill more than they would do with their clubs during the early part of the campaign as well. So I wouldn't say tiredness will have a huge bearing on things. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the third place playoff, actually. 300 to 1 shots Morocco there against Croatia, a repeat of their opening group game between the two teams, which ended 0-0. I'd be very, very surprised if we got another 0-0 game. Obviously, opening games tend to be pretty cagey and close anyhow. I thought Morocco edged that match, actually, so there's plenty to be positive about from their perspective. But yeah, I think that the lack of jeopardy obviously plays its part, but these matches tend to be quite enjoyable, quite open. I wouldn't say chaotic, but they're basically the game that no one wants to play because they wish they were in the final. So you tend to get widespread changes. 4 years ago, Belgium actually fielded the first choice team and England fielded all their reserves. But more often than not, you get a mix and match basically from both teams. So eager to see what the teenies are like coming into this match. But I think Morocco, I'd love to be on their side here, but injuries, fitness, fatigue, mental, emotional, physical is going to be against them. We saw the team news, the fact that Regraoui fielded basically all his key players. One of them had to pull out before the game. Saiss didn't even make the midway point of the first half, and Mazraoui went off on half time as well. So they might be missing 3 of their first choice defenders. But I still think they gave France an almighty scare in that second half. And I actually think, whether it's the eye test or even with the data, Morocco gave France more problems than England did. And England were widely praised for that performance. Morocco produced a higher expected goals figure when you exclude the penalties, had more shots in the penalty area than England did as well. So I think they can be very, very proud, obviously, of their performance. But yeah, eager to see how they kind of set their team up and which players play in this match, which is always a bit of a guessing game. But I think they can cause problems. Of course they can. They've done it to every other team in the competition, so I don't see reasons why they won't do that to Croatia. But in terms of the price, kind of surprised to see, considering Morocco might be without those 3 first choice defenders, Croatia were about 2.25 in that first game against Morocco back in, 4 weeks ago. They're now a bigger price, a reasonably bigger price as well. So in terms of just price alone, I think Croatia's reserves will be stronger than Morocco's reserves. So in a worst case scenario, second team against second team, you'd back Croatia to come out on top. So I think the price on Croatia to win in 90 minutes at 2.46 is absolutely fine. But I'm also going to back goals here because this game tends to be full of them. 10 of the last 11 third place games featured over 2.5 goals. Only England versus Belgium 4 years ago didn't. That featured 2 goals. Of those 11 third place games, 8 saw both teams scoring. 6 went over 3.5. The average goal per game is 3.36. And look, I can see why people would be sort of warned against it because of the way in which Morocco have defended. Croatia too haven't offered a huge amount in the final third, but this is a very different game to what we've seen elsewhere in this competition. Both teams have still got plenty of flair, plenty of invention in those teams, and even Croatia might be missing Brozovic after he came off early in the last match as well. That midfield trinity might not be featuring here too. So it's just a hunch, really. These kind of games don't tend to mean a huge amount to teams involved. I think here, there certainly is a bit of pride around Croatia and Morocco, so I expect them to take it relatively seriously, but they just tend to be kind of chaos, really. So just looking forward to an open game with, as I say, there's no jeopardy here, so they can go out and play and enjoy themselves as much as they possibly can. So, over 2.5 goals are close to even money with those long-term trends in your favour, I think is a nice play to have.
Yeah, Mark, going with over 2.5 goals, 1.95. Shout out to Croatia, 2.46 on the match odds. If you want to combine the two, currently it's around 3.9, the match with betting exchange, and particularly in and around that hour before kickoff, you'll invariably see a much bigger price on the exchange versus sports books once the liquidity really starts to kick in. Miguel, you're in broad agreement about the goals angle here. You're going for both teams to score 1.76.
Well, it's not a proper football match, so I don't think we can usually apply the proper standards. This match often has a bit of a kind of end of term feel about it, where half the players are either delighted to be there because they're finally starting a game, and a team has kind of achieved and objective, which is the case with Morocco. I mean, there wasn't actually just in stadium last night. There weren't tears from their players, even though they'd gone so close to a final, because they'd done so well to get that far. Or else the other side of it is players that are just absolutely devastated to have their dream crushed and really don't want to be hanging around for 3 or 4 days. I think there tends to be an element of the teams being D-mob happy. I remember with England in 2018, like they went from being so media conscious and talking to us all the time to around the third, fourth players, they were not bothered, and that kind of feeds into the atmosphere. And it's the sort of game where I can just see it being a bit of a kind of not a kickabout, but with that sort of attitude. I mean, it's not like the managers are going to be implying the most exacting standards. It could end up being and given these are two teams that have overperformed, even allowing for Croatia's greater disappointments, it could end up being just a bit of a free-for-all. So I think for this, I'm going for both teams to score, but I don't necessarily think it's the best bet for it.
Yeah, we'll get to the best bets. Yeah, we will indeed, Miguel. I spot it on the bottom of the document. Adrian, you like the Croatia angle here. I think I guess you're going to touch on all the points that Mark said, particularly the point that if their second team, even if they put out a second team, it is more than likely going to be better than Morocco's.
Yeah, I agree with both the lads. Yeah, I think these two might take it more seriously than England did, because it's not a game they're likely to be involved in that often. Obviously, with Croatia, they've had a great recent record. They did win the third place playoff, didn't they, in 1998 against Holland or the Netherlands? Yeah, I think that they'll want to go out on a high, maybe for Modric, a little bit like Messi, get themselves a medal of sorts. I just think what splits it for me is what Mark was talking about. If they do make heavy changes, the Croats will be stronger, but it's more to do with the state of their bodies, the Morocco players. I mean, Regragui said that too many of his key men are at 60 or 70% max, and that's the reason that they're out of the World Cup. He believed if it was a longer tournament with more gaps between games, that they would have potentially beaten France or certainly come closer. And I tend to agree. They're just flagging, and for a team that's built really around being defensive and keeping that shape, to then go into a game where ultimately it doesn't matter, that jeopardy is gone, as Mark said. You wonder what might happen. If you just take your eye off the ball, 5%, 10%, things can open up. And yeah, I would back Croatia here. Slightly more pedigree with the players, more goal threats. Yeah, I would have gone for goals as well. I think that's a great shout. Obviously, 10 of the last 11 is very strong backstory, isn't it? But yeah, for me, Croatia at this price, 2.46, it's fantastic, and I definitely want to take that.
Yeah, especially when Mark was saying about the first game and the price Croatia went off there. So that's Croatia from Adrian and Mark. Mark likes over 2.5, 1.95. Miguel's safest bet anyways, both teams to score 1.76. Move on to the long shots, and this is 3 essentially bets on the World Cup final, Argentina versus France. So take your pick. Who's been in the best form? Who's your favorite out of the last 4 or 5 weeks you want to follow? We'll start with you, Miguel. You're going for correct score here, and Messi and co to get it done in 90 minutes. Argentina 2, France 1, 14.5.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, 2 of the last 3, actually, is it more than that? 3 of the last 4 World Cup finals have gone to 2006, 2010, 2014. Yeah, 3 of the last 4 have gone to extra time. But I just have a feeling about this one, given the momentum around Argentina. And it's one of those where if I was asked, almost good instinct, it's just 2-1. I think both teams will score, because I don't think either defense is sturdy enough, and the quality is too much. But it's not overwhelming in that sense, because they are ultimately well structured sides with a good bit of fight about them. And 2-1, which is also scoring the England-France game, but the France feels fairly logical. And I mean, from that perspective, logic would probably usually dictate a France win, but I just think there's too many variables. There's too many there's too much of elements like emotion and psychology distort a World Cup final in that way, and it's why I'm just kind of going towards Argentina. And also, I mean, the big thing there is we're seeing a Messi in at this stage of his career in unusually good form. It is almost like back to 2015, and someone who looks in the sort of mood to make the difference.
Yeah, Argentina 2, France 1, 14.5, something you could definitely see happening and wouldn't be a great fairy tale. And Adrian, you're on similar lines, slightly safer, but this price does stand out a small bit. Argentina, both teams to score, yes. If you do think the game's going to go the way you and Miguel think, 7.4 is a massive price.
Exactly, that's what I thought. I mean, when you look at 14.5, that's pretty juicy on 2-1. But if you want to factor in a 3-1 or a 3-2, or even the carnage of a 4-3, then go down this route. So yeah, it's 2-1 would be the most likely, I've got to say, of all of those score lines. But yeah, I'm going to go for Argentina and both teams to score. I just feel that, yeah, for the reasons outlined, that neither defence is good enough to keep clean sheets necessarily, or to keep at bay the respective forwards. The other thing to factor in, I think I'm right in, you'll know this, Miguel, Argentina have had a lot of matches at this stadium, haven't they? At the Lusail Stadium. I don't think France... Have they played there, France?
I've been to all of Argentina's games. France, have they been here? I don't think France have been here. Because I've been here for Argentina against Saudi Arabia, against...
All the knockout games bar one have been at that stadium for Argentina.
Yeah. And I think in terms of the... and the Poland game was there as well, yeah.
Yeah, well, you look at the support that they've had from the stands there, the comfort in the surroundings.
Yeah,
it really is. It does feel like they're home at the moment, Argentina coming into the final. And does that make a difference when the teams walk out and they see 3/4 of the stadium decked out in light blue? Will that make a difference? A marginal one, I would say, even though the French players have played on the biggest stage in all sorts of different atmospheres. It will feel, I think, for the French players that they're playing away, and that might just shade it. So yeah, Argentina and both teams to score. I did want to flag up a couple of shouts for Golden Boot. Now I'm on Lionel Messi, or have been since the start, but I couldn't help but notice that Julian Alvarez is 23.0 and Olivier Giroud is 25.0 here. For either of those to come in, they need a brace in the final, and for Messi or Mbappe to blank. Now, it's not, based on what we've seen of Alvarez, particularly in the last few games, and if Argentina don't get a penalty, then that is something that might come in. He is red hot, Alvarez, as is Olivier Giroud, if it turns out to be France's day. So, two real long shots there that might be worth a pound or two.
Yeah, I'm on Giroud at about 230-ish based on Mark's advice a few weeks ago. So his couple of misses in the semi-final have broken my heart, to be honest with you. I don't think I can get up for it, but Mark, shout out to you on that one. And if you see the game going the way Adrian and Miguel says with goals, then they're very much two live contenders for Golden Boot for sure. And Mark, saying all that, as a long shot now, we will be wary that you do think there's a bit of juice in boring us for 90 minutes. Mark, come on, you're killing us.
No, I would not be surprised whatsoever if this game is goalless. Okay. On Sunday night, 2 of the last 3 World Cup finals have been 0-0 in 90 minutes. 3 of the last 8 have gone 0-0 in 90 minutes, 4 of which have been drawn as well. So, just playing the numbers, really. I think 7-1, 8.0 on another 0-0 game. Just the fear factor, the respect that they'll have for both teams, the respect that both teams will have for their star men as well. As I say, I suspect Argentina will defend much deeper. France have never been the most high pressing team either. So wouldn't be a huge surprise to see a bit of a stalemate and neither team sort of making any sort of forays until extra time and possibly penalties either. So that'd be my long shot.
Okay, 0-0 is currently 8.0 and has correct score on Matchbook. Again, if you're looking at for a bet before kickoff, check out the Matchbook betting exchange. You would be surprised at some of the prices you'll find there. So move on to podcast best bets. So big pressure on the last time. There'll be a big push on the podcast best bets offer up to £50, double the odds. So Miguel, you're going for it here. You said you're saving the best to last. It's in this third place playoff, Croatia versus Morocco. Domestic Miguel is back over 3.5 goals, 3.3 or 6.6.
So, I mean, it'll be a bit of not a party or a carnival atmosphere, but a free-for-all. Someone will score early. That'll get a response. So it'll end up being... I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to a 4-3 Croatia-Morocco. or as we saw, say, in USA 94, when Bulgaria were basically, quote unquote, on the beach after their run, and Sweden just hammered them 4-0. It's prone to this sort of thing. So yeah, I might have gone for a high scoring team where both teams score a lot of goals, or which is probably more likely. Or I mean, this at least allows the potential for one to batter the other. So I'm going for over 3.5.
Yeah, could be conservative, maybe. So 3.5 goals.
And just to stress, this is a game that shouldn't be dictated by previous norms about either side, because none of that applies.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, drew 0-0 as we've mentioned in the first game. Mark, you're going, well, I would say relatively conservative given Miguel's pick, but over 2.5 goals. You are on the same lines. So yeah, that's definitely a positive. All right.
Yeah, for all the reasons Miguel's talked about as well. It's not a proper game, as he says. So, and I completely agree. All the biases you have of both teams coming into this match can be sort of blown away, because it's just there's no jeopardy here. So teams can go out and try and enjoy themselves. As I say, it's landed in 10 of the last 11 third place games at the World Cup. So to get almost even money on a repeat, and the one game it didn't featured 2 goals. So not a million miles away either. So yeah, happy to cheer on goals in the third place game.
Okay, and then for those that want this offer for the World Cup final, sorry to French supporters, but Adrian is going with and sticking with Argentina to win the World Cup, which he's been backed from 6.8 all the way down to 2.02 for his best bet in the final.
Yeah, started out with them. I want to finish with them as well. And yeah, I've got no reason to change my mind. I think I've always felt that Lionel Messi was the greatest player that we've seen. And I think he's outlined that and claimed that status. I just would love him to go one step further and to win that World Cup. Now, I think he deserves it. And yeah, I mean, it could be a draw. Clearly, it could go into extra time. It could go to penalties. But this bet is just about who lifts that trophy at the end of the day. And I think we've all agreed across the course of this podcast that there's very, very little to choose between Argentina and France. It is a 50-50 game. So if we double up our odds and get 4.04 on Argentina to lift the trophy in a 50-50 game, cheering on Messi, as I know that a lot of people around the world are at the moment, then that feels like a nice bet to have on the last match of this great tournament.
Yeah, let's hope Messi does it. It's got a biggest game for the next 4 years coming up on Sunday. So hope the guys have guided you with a few bets to add to the experience there. And there's a few nice comments there. We really appreciate everyone tuning in throughout the World Cup. We've thoroughly enjoyed doing it. And my thanks to Adrian, Clarke, Mark O'Hare, and Miguel Delaney for joining us. And we'll be back for one last domestic podcast. I know a lot of people have come in for the World Cup, but if you do want a bumper Christmas podcast, myself, Adrian, and Mark will be there. Miguel's going for a well-needed break, which Adrian and Mark will subsequently follow him, and then we'll be back post Epic Cup weekend. So a nice Christmas break. So do join us one last time. That'll be next Thursday. But as I said, my thanks to Adrian, Mark, Miguel. Check out Matchbook Insights if you want a recap of all these bets, maybe the hour or two before kickoff. Check out the Matchbook Betting Exchange again in that hour or two before kickoff. Other than that, we'll chat to you on Thursday. If not, have a great Christmas, enjoy Sunday's final, and have a happy New Year. Take it easy.